It's been exactly 1 month to the day since those 4 University of Idaho students were ambushed in their beds and then stabbed to death in the middle of the night. Still, police remain tight-lipped about the investigation, saying online rumors are becoming a huge distraction for detectives. Meanwhile, the victims' families and the Moscow, Idaho community are frustrated that there still has not been a suspect named in the case. To talk more about the investigation, I'm joined by Tracy Walder. She's a former CIA officer and FBI special agent who's been following the case closely with us since the start. Tracy, thank you for being with us once again. I want to focus on what police did say yesterday, and you can read between the lines on what they're not saying. They said, we have a lot of information. We're keeping that information safe. We're not releasing specific details because we do not want to compromise the investigation. So they definitely have more than they're willing to say publicly. We want more than an arrest. We want a conviction. We want justice. You've got to hope that they're getting closer than they're willing to share for obvious reasons.
Well, thank you for having me, Marni. It's good to see you. I think this is really what I've said all along, is that it's more than just an arrest in this case. This is being able to prosecute this case fully and to the full extent of the law, and not having anything like a mistrial, not having issues trying to seat a jury. That's why they are keeping this information so close to the chest.
This is a grisly detail, but worth noting as investigators try to gather evidence. We are hearing reports that some of the victims' hands were bagged in an effort to secure possible evidence, DNA from the killer. Why is that important, and how could it play in trying to track down the person or people responsible?
So yes, and obviously it sounds like a very flippant, kind of cruel term, but bagging one's hands, particularly in cases of homicide, is actually quite normal, or SOP, standard operating procedure. And typically they're bagged with paper bags because it's biological evidence, and that's how you contain biological evidence. Really, what's done there is to ensure that any kind of evidence underneath their fingernails, if anyone put up a struggle, was able to dig into the suspect a bit. That's why hands are bagged, because you have to properly be able to secure that evidence to transport them to the medical examiner for that to then be processed by them.
And then the idea is, if there is similar evidence in all 4 of the victims that could tie to one person or people in this case, that would be critical in uncovering a clue.
Correct. So I'm guessing, again, this is just my hypothesis, that the DNA that they retrieved from any, on the crime scene, under fingernails, those kinds of things, is probably not in CODIS, which is the nationwide database. And so what they're probably trying to do is, if all 4 had similar DNA on them, then what that does do is build a profile. And what that does do is, once they do identify a suspect, links that suspect to all 4 victims.
Based on big cases like this that you have worked in the past, the chance that the killer is watching as police release more information, as families give interviews, as we report on the investigation?
I do think that the killer is probably watching this, which is another reason why I do believe that they have been so tight-lipped and so very deliberate in terms of the evidence that they have released. I do think that they think the killer is either a member of the community or has ingrained himself back into the community. And I do think that they feel that the killer is really watching sort of their every move, and they don't want the killer to get one step ahead of them.
The public is so interested in this case, not just in Moscow, but nationwide. We have seen so much interest in finding answers and tracking down the person or people responsible. But on the heels of that, you have police saying it's been frustrating, it's been distracting to have so much public involvement, and then rumors spreading. How difficult is that? How does it hinder an investigation when you've got this much pressure from outside?
So I think the problem is, when you have this much pressure on you, you have a lot of pressure to do things quickly and to get things done and processed quickly. And then what that does is it can perhaps lead to mistakes in terms of evidence processing, and then the logging of that evidence. And that can become problematic. Also, you have a natural overabundance of evidence here, even without public tips, and even without public speculation. And so what they have to do is go and run down every single one of those tips and speculation, and also process the known evidence that was at the crime scene, or the known digital evidence from the victims and other potential suspects. So what that does is it actually adds to the time and allows any suspect or potential suspects to sort of get out ahead of the case, and that can become problematic.
A monumental task, and they're circling back, doing interviews of people they had already talked to before. Tracy, as always, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.